and she is currently the co-chair of the Global Young Academy. She has many awards and honors to her credit. She was elected as the member of the Royal Society of Biology in 2019. She received many awards. Some of them are IAP Young Scientist Award in 2015, SCRB Women Excellence Award in 2013, the very prestigious INSA Young Scientist Award or Medal for INSA Medal for Young Scientists in 2009. She has published many research articles, book chapters, and popular articles in English, as well as our local language in West Bengal, that is Bengali. Uh, now, she has many more laurels to her credit, but I don't want to take much of her time now. I invite you, Dr. Bhadro, to deliver your talk and whatever you want to say to our students. And we would like to listen from you, and the Zoom is all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Upashana, for the invitation, and I think it's an excellent initiative of INYAS. It's great to see INYAS growing and members of INYAS and different chapters coming up with excellent programs, and I'm sure many young students are going to benefit from this initiative. Let me start sharing my screen. I have a small presentation telling people a little bit about what we do, but also I'm going to take as many questions as possible. So I urge students to ask questions, and I guess people will be typing in questions, so they cannot stop me in the middle. But if there is something which is a burning question which comes up in the chat box, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask. So as you can see, I put a very intriguing title for the talk, saying when work can be fun. And of course, because I am an ecologist, a behavioral biologist, then the context of my work is nature watching. And that's what I have put in as the title. And I hope at the end of the talk to convince a few of you at least that yes, what we do is really a lot of fun and is worth considering as a career option, especially coming from a country like India. Okay, so why nature watching and how if you try to look back at where I come from, Upashana has already said I am from Aizer, Kolkata, and I just wanted to give you a glimpse of our very beautiful campus. Anyone who is in this area after the pandemic is over, you are most welcome to visit us. We always invite students and faculty to visit us, look at our labs, interact with our students, and we have several outreach activities. In fact, right now I am looking after the outreach activities at the Office of the Dean of International Relations and Outreach. So just write to me, ask your teachers from your college or school to write to me, and we can arrange visits, lab visits. And of course, this year it will not be possible, but we have started doing open days. And when we have an open day, then everybody is welcome to visit us and find out more about the science that we do. And if you're interested, please visit our website, find out how we get there. I'm not going into the details of it. Now, why we talk about nature and why we need to think about nature. Biodiversity is something that is a very, very well-known common word in the popular jargon today. So what is biodiversity? Many of you who are students of biology would already be familiar with the word, but I thought I would put it here to put things in context. If you look at the United Nations Environment Programme's description of biodiversity, they say it is the variety of life on Earth and includes all species, organisms, populations, the genetic variation among these, and their complex assemblages of communities and ecosystems. That's a really big definition of biodiversity. But for the layperson, biodiversity is anything and everything that is life or is a living form. Now, if you think about the world's entire biodiversity, more than 80% of it is still not documented. We don't even know what species exist in the rainforests. We don't even know what species exist in our own forests in the Western Ghats in the Northeast. And it's nice when we suddenly get to know that even, species as big as frogs, you would imagine, okay, fine, we don't know all the insects maybe. But no, even recently, one of my friends who works on frogs, he has been coming up with newer and newer species of frogs which had never been known to science. living in India and working in India. So species like frogs, you would think, are quite visible. They call so much, they hop about so much. So everybody would know what frogs to expect in their surroundings. But even frogs can have been unknown. Some years back, there was a report for a completely new primate species in the Northeast. Can you imagine a monkey in the forest that everybody would have seen was unknown to science? So biodiversity is not yet documented, and unfortunately in the modern day, study of natural history, study of nature has somehow taken a back seat, and documenting species diversity has kind of not remained fashionable anymore. And so this field is suffering a lot. But why should we care? Because biodiversity is not just important for documentation, but also for looking at options of alternative medicines. You would probably know of the Nobel Prize given to a Chinese researcher for coming up with a herbal remedy for cancer. So people are looking at alternative sources of medicine. People are looking at alternative sources of fuels. Biofuels are a big topic these days. So for sustainable development in the era of climate change, we really need to know what biological resources we have in order to be able to exploit them in a sustainable fashion. Now, when we think about nature watching, if I tell you, you should, observing nature is nice, and maybe I tell you, okay, I'll give you an internship. I want you to do some field work, or I want to want you to send you to some place to do some nature watching. Then typically people would think of forests. The deeper and the denser they are, the better. Maybe some would even come up with deserts. Very fantastic ecosystems under the sea and oceans, or maybe even in the alpine zones. So you would be thinking, typically, people would think of places where you can do nature watching, need to have a lot of greenery or a lot of life forms which are immediately visible to the eyes. You don't really think that we can do nature watch in a city. But if you think about it, even in the most crowded and the most polluted of all cities, you would definitely find some form of life of the other. If you live in a city, just look around you. I'm sure you are going to find there are birds, there are small animals, there are lots and lots of insects. Of course, we all are aware of the mosquitoes that bite us night and day, and the various diseases that can bring diseases. There would be butterflies, there would be cockroaches in your kitchen. They are forms of life. You don't have to go to a forest to observe a tiger or an elephant to do nature watching. And so I'm sure you're going to find life around you. Of course, there is this teeming diversity of life which we cannot see with our naked eyes. You keep a piece of bread lying around for a few days, you'll get all the mold that comes on top of it. That is a form of life. You leave some food out for some time, it starts rotting because there'll be bacteria growing in it. You're trying to create curd out of milk. You're taking help of bacteria, and we are all aware of it, only we don't think of bacteria as a form of life. When we talk about nature watching in a city, this is just a glimpse I want to give you. All of these photographs are taken. I'm sitting in a room in my house, and it's just outside as my little garden, and all of these photographs are from my garden. So living in a city, if you just step out, go into a park, even if you have a few flower pots in your balcony, you might be able to do nature watching sitting right there. And a large number of species will be visible to you only if you make yourself aware of it. Urban ecosystems have become very, very important topics of study these days because, of course, we are having rapid urbanization. Initially, it was the global north where we were seeing this rapid urbanization, but now even the global south, developing countries are becoming more and more urbanized, which basically means we are having more concrete, we are having less trees, we are having more traffic. So all the urban features, metal roads, less grass, less soil being exposed to people, all of this is becoming features even in villages. More electricity, more light pollution at night, which means that ecosystems are transitioning from rural to urban, as are people. And because of that, urban ecosystems need to be understood in order to make our cities more sustainable for the future. That is the future of cities. How do you live in harmony with the species without destroying them? And in urban ecosystems, the larger animals, especially, and even birds, they play a very, very important role of scavengers. And of course, in India, this is all the more important, where we have a lot of garbage strewn around. Even in spite of Swachh Bharat, we don't really have the, civil or civic ideal to keep our premises clean. Unfortunately, there is a lot of garbage, and that is the source of food for a lot of scavengers. So scavengers are an important component. The photograph out here with the bear is not from India, of course, it's from the US, where these are scavengers in city garbage dumps. So scavengers become an important part, and they are very, very important for maintaining balance in the urban ecosystems. I would like to mention my friend Harini. Professor Nagendra is an ecologist. She is teaching at the Azim Premji University in Bangalore. And these are two books that she has written, fantastic books, which I recommend to anyone who likes reading. So I wanted to highlight this because she works on urban ecosystems, urban ecology, and especially she looks at trees and plants in cities. So this very nice book called Cities and Canopies is about, as it says, trees in Indian cities. And then there's a specific book on Bangalore, and she has looked at how the city has changed and how nature in the city has changed and how people play a very important role in greening of cities and maintaining tiny pockets of greenery in the cities. So these are very nice books, very nice to read, not really not textbooks. These are just general reading for the popular public. And this can give you a glimpse of how ecology as a field has developed from people doing very exotic studies in exotic locations to people working more close to applied sciences and looking at the future of sustainability. I am a behavioral biologist. I got trained in ecology and behavior at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. And I look up to people who have earned a lot of fame in their profession as behavioral biologists watching animals. How I'm sure the photographs on this page are known to many of you. At least a couple of these photos, all of you who are listening in would identify. Jane Goodall and Sir David Attenborough, of course, are living legends. I intentionally did not put the name on the photograph on the corner, who is probably the father of them all. Carl von Frisch, Konrad Lorenz, and Nico Tinbergen, um, are, of course, they deserve special mention because of the simple reason that these are the only people who have earned or won the Nobel Prize for doing ethology. They are the founders of this field in terms of starting it as a field. And they were awarded the Nobel Prize together for their work in this area of science, which has really got nothing to do with medicine. And much before all of them, Charles Darwin has done a lot of animal watching. If you read his books, there are nice descriptions of a lot of behavior. Only then, ethology was not known as a field. Everybody was a naturalist. So, what do animal watchers do as part of their work? Now, of course, they have a lot of fun. Often they go to forests, to exotic locations. They need a lot of patience, sit down with pen and paper or computer and take a lot of data on plants and animals. They often have a very fancy field gear like the camera you see here, or very high-tech binoculars, GPS equipments, video cameras, and all of that. And of course, that makes conservation research, ecological research, wildlife biology very attractive to some young people, because you get to travel to fantastic locations, stay in tents, and work with exotic animals. Gives you a lot of experience. It's very adventurous, and of course, it's a lot of fun. But of course, that also costs a lot of money. This kind of research is very, very important, gives us a lot of insights into ecosystems, gives us a lot of insights into behaviors of exotic animals, helps us plan their conservation, breeding programs, all of this, and maintain the health of ecosystems. But then all of us are not fortunate to have a lot of money to travel to exotic places to do really high quality exotic research. But then, what can we do as researchers in developing countries where we don't have a lot of money for research, especially when it's not an applied science, not directly related to immediate human benefits as of now? So we can do animal watching even without a lot of money. All you need is your interest to watch animals, your interest in the field, your interest to ask questions about the private lives of animals, as I like to call it, and the power of thinking. And with these two simple tools, you can do excellent research without having any money, without having any affiliation, without having any, plans, any means to go and travel to different places and observe different exotic animals, which of course requires a lot of official processing too. This is stuck. So this is one of the images I had put on this earlier slide from my garden. If you look at it closely, of course, this is a sunflower, but then there is a caterpillar on it and there is a honeybee on it. And this image, I thought, is very representative of how much you can do just sitting on a chair in your balcony or in your garden. If you think about it, in my garden, all those photographs that I put together, there was a cat, there was a myna, there were caterpillars, there's a sunflower, there's a honeybee, and there's a crow. And then there are all kinds of complex interactions which are happening between these organisms. The cat can eat the chicks and the eggs of the myna. We have actually seen it happen because this myna happened to be nesting in my bathroom window, and one of the chicks got eaten by a cat. Um, Mynas and crows feed on the caterpillars, and so they are competing with each other for the food. The caterpillar here is actually eating parts of the sunflower, so the caterpillar is destroying the sunflower. It's a prey predator interaction. The sunflower is, of course, the food of the caterpillar. The honeybee is pollinating the sunflower, and the sunflower is giving nectar to the honeybee. So it's a two-way interaction again. So you can see very, very complex interactions happening right here in my garden. And if I had the time and if I wanted to do this, I could sit and observe this all day and get a lot of insights into the dynamics of what is happening in this small community. Here, I would like to go back to Darwin and quote him. This is the last paragraph of his book on the origin of species, which was a revolutionary book, of course. I would like to read it out, although you can all read it on the screen. He writes, "It is interesting to contemplate a tangled bank, clothed with many plants of many kinds, with birds singing on the bushes, with various insects flitting about, and with worms crawling through the damp earth, and to reflect that these elaborately constructed forms, so different from each other and dependent upon each other in so complex a manner, have all been produced by laws acting around us." And of course, he is talking about the laws of evolution, of natural selection. And this idea of a tangled bank has caught on the imagination of naturalists, and the idea that species are not isolated populations. Everybody is interacting with everybody. And even in my little garden, I could show you a tiny piece of this tangled bank. So if you think about it, this is also the reason why we need to understand biodiversity, because we ourselves are part of this tangled bank. So ethology is the science of animal behavior. So when you are really doing animal behavior as a science, when you're taking data, trying to put numbers to it, trying to analyze patterns in it, you're doing ethology. And in order to understand, appreciate, and conserve biodiversity, we really need to understand how animals live, how they behave, how they interact with other animals. That is the bigger picture, evolutionary question of how species are interconnected and why in the process of evolution they have attained these status as we see them today. This image, of course, needs no introduction. And this is where I will be ending my justification of how this is a tangle bank. Everyone around the world, if you think about it, is waiting for the vaccine. People are getting vaccinated. We are reading news about the COVID-19 pandemic every day, every night. It's like has been the top of the headlines for the last at least 10 months. Now, this tiny, tiny piece of life and not life, it's a particle, about 120 nanometers. It is driving the world crazy. Is it even a living being? We don't even know. It's a virus, right? It is both living and non-living at the same time. And all the research which is happening is being focused on trying to understand is affecting the human system, how it is behaving, the behavior and the development of the disease, in order to address how we can control it, how the vaccine will work, whether the vaccine will work or not, can we come up with some kind of medication against it, etc., etc., etc. And I'm sure all of you are reading in the news that there are a lot of post-COVID emergencies which are happening, and only at least 6 months after the COVID pandemic started, scientists and doctors got to understand that there are changes which are happening in the body. The the coronavirus is affecting the circulatory system. It is creating clots in the body, and even most of the pathways that are being followed are not yet understood. So here again, for the virus, this is the behavior of the virus, and your body is the ecosystem of the virus. So we need to understand its behavior and ecology as much as we need to understand the molecular mechanisms driving the process of the infection. So my lab, as Upashana said, is called the Dog Lab. And we study dogs or street dogs in India. A lot of my students here on the slide, PhD students, MS thesis students, and I could not put all the interns. In the last 11 years, I think we have had at least 100 of them who have come and work in my lab, undergrad students, master students, who come work, spend 2 months, get to know how to interact with animals, and also get to participate in some of our experiments. So we are not a very big lab at any point of time. All of these students are not there now. These are students past and present. So we keep growing, but then we are typically a small team of people who are all in love with animal behavior and in love with dogs. So why dogs? Because they're easily available, they are very fascinating, because they also help us to address evolutionary questions about how dogs became man's best friend. I'm not going to talk today about all of our work. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of the kind of work we do so that you can ask me questions about it later. So free-ranging dogs are easily available. I can just step out of my lab or step out of my house and I can get my model system right there. I don't have to travel to exotic locations. My students don't have to travel a lot to do their work. And for this, we don't need too much money. People can just hop onto a bus or a train, get off at the next stop and do their experiments. So it's inexpensive. Another very interesting point about dogs is the story from November 2018, which caught my attention. Dogs are there where humans are, and they have this unique behavior of following around certain humans whom they build a bond with. This was a story about this Himalayan expedition team, which went to a very high summit in Nepal. And this one particular dog started following them in one of the villages. And typically they would stop at the last village, but this dog did not. It actually went up to the summit, which was very conducive environment for the dogs. And this reminded me of another story which we have all grown up reading. I'm sure you can identify this image here. Of course, these are the Pandavas going up to heaven as the story goes. And we all know that at the end, only the eldest of them, Yudhishthir, made it up to the top, and the dog. And this dog did exactly what this dog did 3 years back, 2 years back. Amazing connection. And what fascinated me is that dogs in the subcontinent have probably been the same in the same same in the sense of ecology and behavior for these hundreds of years that we have existed here as humans, and dogs have been around us all the time and have interacted with us the same way all through these years. Only now we have become very intolerant of dogs. People want to kill them. People want to remove them from the streets. A lot of people actually tell me that only if we removed all dogs from the streets, we will become America. But of course, we won't. And given the condition of America, I don't know whether we want to become America right now. Jokes apart, I'll just tell you the kind of things that we do. We try to understand how dogs interact with each other. We look at behaviors like mating, parental care, interactions between puppies, territorial interactions between groups, competition between individuals over food, space, and mates. We try to understand how dogs interact with humans, humans being the source for food and shelter, humans as threats. And let me tell you, our data has actually shown that humans are the biggest cause of deaths of puppies. We also try to understand how smart they are in terms of solving tasks like opening a container to get food, their ability to distinguish between quantities, which is less food, which is more food, and their food preference, whether they can sniff out their preferred food, which is meat, when it's mixed up with a lot of garbage and with carbohydrates. And in doing all of this, the big picture that we are trying to address is how did this happen that among all the species which were around humans, dogs were the only species which built this extremely special bond with humans, to the extent that eventually humans started making all of these artificially bred breeds, not for running fast or hunting more or for giving more meat, but breeds that they wanted to cuddle and pet and keep in their houses. So what changed or what happened in this interaction between dogs living on streets and humans to the change that they became man's best friend? This is the big picture that we are trying to address. People all over the world are working on pet dogs, but we are the first lab to actually have started working on free-ranging dogs to address this question. So we probe into the private lives of dogs, and I'll just give you a very brief glimpse of things that we do. We try to understand how mothers care for their pups, and I'll show you some data. In doing that, we did some sampling of den sites. We tried to measure the den sites, characterize them into how big they are or how small they are, for how many puppies were born there, whether they are close to food, whether they are well lit or not, etc. And we created an index to understand what is the relation between the number of pups born in a litter and and the nature of the den. And we addressed questions like, is the mother really searching for a good den, or is she accepting any den which she finds, any hole in the ground is good enough as a den? And we actually saw that no, the mother actually puts in a lot of effort to choose a proper den before she gives birth. So as you can see, this is data for almost 150 den sites collected over 5 years. But what I would like to point out is, once trained a bit, any undergrad student or high school student could have done this piece of work in terms of collecting of the data. This was not something which needed years of practice, but something which needed rigor and a lot of hard work. We try to estimate activity levels of dogs to find out what time of the day are they active, what time of the day are they sleeping. And this again needed a lot of hard work. The student who did this work for our master's thesis spent days walking around streets and documenting dogs and their behavior, collected more than 5,000 data points over a period of 1 year. But again, anyone could do this with very little expense, only a notebook and a pen. And from this data, we also characterized how these dogs budget their activity during the whole day. What are the behaviors that we are showing? And of course, we found that 50% of the time, the dogs are just resting, doing nothing much. We are asked questions like, can dogs follow human pointing gestures? Experiments that people do in very sophisticated setups inside labs, we did right on the streets. Very simple, you point and you see whether the dog is going to follow your point and go to this bowl. We did this with puppies, adults, and juveniles. And eventually we found that Puppies are very good at following pointing. They are very obedient, if you want to call it. Juveniles and adults are not. They don't really follow the pointing. It's like 50-50, yes or no. Just to summarize a few of our findings, with a lot of data, we eventually showed that free-ranging dogs live in complex joint family systems. They have very active social lives. Humans are the biggest threat. Only about 19% of the pups born in a population survive to become adults. So next time somebody tells you there are too many puppies born this year, tell them that most of them will die. Of course, if you do not interfere with them and feed them and give them vaccine and everything and make them survive, nature will take care of it. Dogs are very good at understanding human gestures and utilizing them to adjust their behavior to humans. They make decisions regarding humans based on their immediate and past experiences. All of this that I'm summing up comes from a series of papers, and I'm not showing the data on purpose because that's not what this talk is about. And very interesting finding was that it's not really food which helps you to develop a bond with dogs, but the love that you show to them. If you pet a dog, the dog will become your friend rather than if you feed it for days. So we think they come to us for the food, but not really. They really come to people who show them love. I just wanted to highlight this, that I've been saying anybody can do this, anybody can do this, and this is right here proof that anyone who has some interest, patience, time, and can sit down with a pen and paper can learn to do animal behavior research. And why I'm saying this, that I'm showing you proof, is because the first image you see here is of a dog called Kalu who has given birth in our garden. We see the puppies here, they're really small. And the two images here, this is Ujan and this is Rupkatha, my son and my daughter, who are learning to take behavioral observations on this group in the garden. They are doing this 4 days a week, morning, afternoon, evening. They are actually taking serious data after they have gone through some training. So if a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old kid can learn and do this, any of you can learn and do this. So that is the fun of doing observations, and eventually you see live animals in front of you, you see life evolving in front of you, a lot of interactions, a lot of things that you never knew about the system open up in front of you. It is indeed a lot of fun, provided this is an animal that you like observing. I would like to end with some recommended reading. This is Professor Raghavendra Gadadkar, my mentor. I did my PhD with him on the politics and insect societies and wasp societies, to be precise. He is writing this fascinating column called More Fun Than Fun in Wire Science. And I highly recommend it for everyone, whether you like animal behavior, like biology, doesn't matter. This is a column he writes once in 2 weeks, comes out on Wednesdays. And each of them are a gem of a piece for reading, for popular reading. And every time he writes about some interesting experiments which have been done in animals or even humans. And the focus of this is about experiments which were a lot of fun to do and did not cost a lot of money. So since I've been talking about this, I thought I will highlight this. And another series that he has just finished writing in Resonance, the magazine which is brought out by the Indian Academy of Science and is available for everyone. It's freely available. He writes this series on how to design experiments in animal behavior. Again, the focus is simple experiments which anybody can do and which have been done already. He highlights this, and he has written 15 of these on experiments in animal behavior, some from his lab, some from others. And I particularly wanted to highlight the last one because that was about our work on dogs. So I'm very proud of this particular article. The last one that came out yesterday is a critical analysis of why it is important to promote non-expensive but high quality research. And I would recommend, again, everyone reads this for motivation and food for thought. My last set of recommended reading are these 5 fantastic books which I have been inspired by in school, in high school, in college, and during my PhD days at different points of time in my life. Lee Dugatkin is a fantastic author. All his books are great to read. So is Matt Ridley. So is Gerald Durrell. Anyone who likes animals of any kind, I recommend you to read all of Gerald Durrell's books. I fell in love with animal watching, reading his books. Same with Desmond Morris, and this again a very fantastic book by Professor Gadakar again, which kind of got me into the field of animal behavior as an undergrad student, which is easily available on Amazon. All of these books would be available on Amazon. I would these and start reading. I'm going to stop here, thanking INYAS and especially the INYAS Kolkata-Bhubaneshwar chapter, not just for inviting me, but for coming up with this very, very nice series of talks that they are doing. And I'm very happy to take questions.
Very interesting, Dr. Bhadro. This is amazing to see how your little kids are performing behavioral science at this stage, such a little age. And this, in fact, shows how interesting this field could be, right? So now we have some time left. We have around 20 minutes. So we'll take up questions. We have some audience questions, and we also have some of our own questions, which have been designed in such a way to help these students who might be watching this program or will be watching in future to understand how to go about this particular career path, the career path that you took. So the first question that I would like you to address and help us understand, help students understand is how is nature watching similar or different than the other terminologies that we often use? For example, wildlife biology, conservation biology, environment science, etc. And is nature watching more about behavioral biology or something else?
Okay, so nature watching is a phrase that I used for the title of my talk. Rather, it's not really a technical term that anybody uses anymore. So you could train in ecology and watch nature. You can train in animal behavior. But if you look at the fields that we typically teach in our universities, environmental science is more related to pollution control and understanding her sustainability. So it is more an applied field, and environmental science with the basic training for becoming an ecologist. That does not mean that if you do an environment, I mean, I have a student who comes from an environmental science background, and I see that he needs to read up a lot more the basics of evolution and ecology, because that's not something that he has been exposed to. But somebody who comes from a background of, say, wildlife biology would have already studied ecology or an animal behavior. So a course design is given a certain name based on the university structure, but nature watching can be, I use nature watching particularly because even somebody who is, say, studying physics but is interested in nature could go and do it. You don't really need to have a degree in ethology to become a nature watcher. So it can be an amateur nature watcher, it can be young students doing it for fun, or people like me who have training in animal behavior doing it as a profession.
Okay. So now I'll take up a couple of the audience questions, very interesting ones, and even I don't know how to answer this, but maybe you can. So this is from Shampurna Guha. She is asking, how is artificial intelligence and genetic engineering adversely impacting the environment?
Adversely
The
impacted?
environment.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
So she's asking, how is artificial intelligence and genetic engineering adversely impacting the environment?
Adversely impacting the environment, that's a very deep question, I would say, because depending on at what level you're thinking, in principle it is not right. If we are doing artificial intelligence, why should it impact the environment? But then, of course, in a very long term, all the computers that we are using and all the junk that we are producing in terms of gadgets and a lot of plastic that we are using, all of that is eventually going back to the environment. But that is not specific to artificial intelligence. And so I wouldn't say artificial intelligence is directly impacting the environment, other than the practice of any other field of science that we are doing today, which requires a lot of energy, which requires a lot of budgetary allocation into equipment and gadgets and all of that. So wouldn't be anything different from
Okay.
that.
So the next question is by Shriparna Chatterjee, and she is also an INYAS member, our local chapter member. She is asking that what kind of precaution would you like to suggest for the beginners, for example, in your area?
Right. So first, when I tell someone to observe a species, my first advice is no contact. Maintain safe distance. You don't have to go and cuddle a dog to observe it. In fact, it's the other way around. When people say, what kind of training does a student need to undergo in your lab? First thing I say is the biggest training or the biggest hurdle I face is to make my students unlearn that they love dogs. Because if two dogs are fighting, the tendency is, oh, they're going to get hurt, let me go stop them. No, please don't interfere. You're an observer. You have to be a neutral observer. You cannot take sides because this is your focal animal. You love this animal, you save it from another. You are interfering. So keep distance, stay away. If it's kids, good to get them vaccinated before they go to work with animals. Okay, so that is a very, very important step, that if they are vaccinated, they are much safer, depending on what animals. And of course, if these are animals which are dangerous, I wouldn't want my son to be doing observations on a cobra. So there are definitely basic levels of precautions that I would like to follow. If they are going to observe butterflies, no precautions other than please don't go catch the butterfly and don't harm it. So depending on what animal they want to watch, the precautions can be from the perspective of the watcher and from the perspective of the animal itself. Because sometimes we get so, enthusiastic about the species that we want to go and touch it and see it up close. And that might be a problem. You might get stung by a bee because you're too close to the flower. So maintaining distance is the first and foremost thing.
Sure. Uh, and that's really, really important. So I have another one here, Shukriti Maiti, and I think he's also a student. So he's asking, ma'am, does the dog, uh, do the dogs intentionally make some facial expressions to control our emotional thoughts?
Interesting question. Whether they make intentional facial expressions is very difficult to say, but what is known as dogs are extremely good at begging. Especially, we have seen that dogs which live around, food stalls and dhabas, they very quickly learn how to beg. They will make eye contact with you and give this very sad look, which makes you feel, melt and give them some food. There is work on pet dogs which actually shows that during the evolutionary process, dogs have somehow hijacked the human response to human babies. So when you look at a small baby, a human baby, you want to cuddle it because making eye contact with babies makes us release oxytocin in the blood, which is called the love hormone or the maternal hormone, and that makes us cuddle the baby. When dogs and humans make eye contact, both release oxytocin in the blood. And this is considered to be one of the biggest factors which has helped the bonding between dogs and humans develop. And it is this which gives this response in many humans towards dogs, which makes them feed the dog. So whether they're making it intentionally, we don't know, but they definitely are capable of doing it. They'll make eye contact, they'll give you this forlorn look, and you will end up giving them food. So blame it on oxytocin.
Yeah. So the next question is, if you are entering this career today, would you change your preparation in any way to facilitate your entry?
No, I didn't have any preparation, frankly. I'll tell you, I did an undergrad in a standard college in Kolkata, Vivekananda College. I think I was lucky because I met the Professor Shilanjan Bhattacharya, who was a PhD from CES, and he spoke a lot about CES. And in our second year field trip, he took us to CES, where we heard a lecture by Professor Gadakkar, and I was so fascinated. We visited his vesperi, and I came back and I said, I want to go and do a PhD in this lab. I'm completely fascinated by this. And that kind of stuck in my mind. it's not that I had a lot of preparation. Those days, we didn't even know what doing a PhD meant. Today's students are much more aware. In our times, you are enter a BSc program, you just get good marks and get out of it and you do an MSc. That was the kind of preparation we had. After my MSc, when I finally cleared the entrance and went to IISc, I didn't even know what it meant to be a PhD student, what writing papers meant, because in our times, we didn't really have access to so many journals. And I learned from scratch at CES, and that didn't hamper me in any way. Well, if I could have, and those days we didn't get chances to do summer internships, but I don't know whether I would have done anything differently. I mean, I completely enjoyed fun.
Okay. And we a lot of times we want to switch our career paths. Maybe we didn't get into nature related career paths and nature watching and all those things earlier, but now we liked it and we want to switch our career. So is it possible to switch career paths from something else to nature related careers, and at what levels such switch can be made? That is, should it be done after BSc, MSc,
It's a
or
very
even after
important
that?
question. And actually, I will tell you, there are some career paths in which it's very difficult to enter at a higher level because you need to come with some amount of preparation to even get started. But ecology, ethology are fields which are very open, which are very diverse, because we need people like engineers, mathematicians, physicists, chemists to do a lot of interdisciplinary work. So we always welcome students from different backgrounds. I have a friend who was an engineer who eventually decided to do a PhD in ecology, and she ended up doing a PhD on forest fires in CS. And she had no training in ecology, but she learned. So as long as you are ready to go back to the classroom and the drawing board and do some basic courses to train yourself, and as long as you're ready to read up, anybody from, I know people who have shifted from medicine and come into this field. I know people who have shifted from physics as a postdoc who has come and done behavior. So it's completely possible, and this is a very, very open field, because as I keep saying, if a 10-year-old kid can do it, you with a master's or a PhD can do it.
Sure. So, considering India, here in this country, and it is genuine also to think about the job security in the job market. So, how is the job market or job security in India when you choose this career path? It will be nice if you could throw some light on both academic career options as well as industry options. And sometimes students also think about, they relate this career with National Geographic or Discovery or Animal, those channels, media channels. So how to go about it?
Right.
Because often yeah.
So let me go one by one. Of course, the academic career path is the easiest to think of, that if you're good enough, most university curricula have courses in organismal biology, in ecology, in evolution. So they would need people trained in the general backgrounds, and you can have an academic job. Of course, academic jobs, like all other good jobs, are competitive. So competitiveness has nothing to do with options. You have to be good in anything that you do to get a good job in a good place. Industrial jobs are not really something that you will be getting easily. But of course, there are big NGOs which will need ecologists and ethologists, or people who work on wildlife and conservation often get hired in big companies because of environmental consultants. So these are the kinds of options that you have. Environmental consultancy is a big thing. The third option is very interesting. In fact, I encourage all my students to do a lot of outreach. And right now I have a student who is training to become a science communicator. She has decided that after her PhD, she will take up science communication as her career. And are very good at science communication. They can definitely, if they have the skills to write or to speak well, then becoming a science communicator and getting enrolled in India, start with Research Matters, start with India Bioscience, or try for higher options, Nature India, Mongabe. There you can have options for career paths in science communication. And of course, there would be a few selected people who can become David Attenboroughs. So this field, of course, gives you a lot of expertise in this, rather a lot of options in using your expertise in science communication.
Sure. So now we are almost about to finish our time. It's 4 minutes left. I'll take a one more question and then I'll go to the end. So this question is, what kind of policies do you think need to be developed to advance nature as a career option in India? Also, how do you see this career path is changing in next few years? Are you more positive on that regard?
So at the level of policy, I think it's very important that we realize that we are one of those biodiversity hotspots, and we need to have government policies, institutional level hiring policies, where we promote research in fields of ecology, behavior, conservation more, because there we don't need to spend a lot of money, but we can train a lot of manpower. If we create job options, then a lot of bright students can come into this field, and this is a very, very important field for tomorrow. We are talking about climate change, we are talking about sustainability, and across the world, universities are expanding their ecological sciences departments, where they are hiring more and more young people. So this is a growing field globally, and India needs to step up and grow in this field. There, the government policymakers can actually do this with lesser funding than in other fields, and can produce high quality research, because we don't have to travel to exotic countries to do nature watching. And to make India actually become one of the forerunners in ecological research, because we have the wealth of natural resources.
Okay. Yeah, it is very interesting, and I think I should emphasize that people also should note this fact that fund requirement here is less, but opportunity is more, and outcome is also more, definitely. So, thank you so much, Dr. Bhadro. It has been a great experience listening to you and discussing with you. And I'm sure my all the student audiences have and will get benefited from this discussion. And at least some will choose nature as their career path. So I thank you once again. We will again come back with another speaker and get another career option in our next session. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and Jai Hind.
Thank you. And anyone who is interested, just write to me with your questions. Bye.